Is that your sister? Is that your brother? That's the question that my son and I get asked all the time. No, I respond. That's my son. Your son? How old is he? Oh, he's 13. 13? But you look so young. Well, that's because I am young. I'm only 29. And then they do the math in their head and they're like, oh wow, you must have been really, really, really young when you had him. Yes, I respond. I was 15 when I got pregnant, and I gave birth 2 weeks after my 16th birthday. Then they have all these questions in their mind. They don't want to be insensitive, they don't want to be too intrusive, but they're curious. They want to know all these things, right? Like they want to know, where's the father of the baby? And so I say, he's never been there. It's always just been me and my little boy, Amari and I. I'm a single mom. And then I get this puzzled look. This puzzled look because people are trying to piece together how it is that I'm 29, a single mother of a 13-year-old boy. How it is that I managed to get a degree in psychology, how I moved on then to get a master's degree in clinical psychology, and how it is that I ended up working for arguably the most reputable news organization in the world. They're baffled. They're baffled because teenage pregnancies are often associated with failure. Teenage pregnancies don't have happy endings. Don't get pregnant, we tell our teenage girls. Your life will be ruined. So people are pleasantly surprised that my life didn't really turn out the way they had expected it to turn out. And the question they ask is, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did I do it? So let's flash back to 2005. I'm 15 years old. I lost my virginity at 15. And I got pregnant the first and only time that I had sex. So if you want to tell your young girls, don't have sex because you'll get pregnant, use me as your example. So here I am. I'm 15, pregnant, absolutely terrified. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to tell. And the first person that I told was my then 10-year-old brother. Imagine. Now that I think of it, that's quite a weighty thing to tell a 10-year-old, right? But surprisingly, he knew exactly what to say, so he advised me that I should tell my mother that I'm pregnant at an upcoming trip. It was December holidays, and we were heading to Mombasa for Christmas. So I planned to tell her the moment that we land in Mombasa. And then that turned into checking into the hotel. I'll tell her then. And then it was like, no, I can't ruin this holiday for her. So then it's just going to be Maya's pregnant, right? So no, okay, fine. So maybe during lunch or dinner or by the swimming pool or by the beach. I was terrified because I couldn't stand the thought of disappointing my mother. I couldn't stand the thought of her just being disappointed in the fact that her little girl, her little 15-year-old girl, is pregnant. So then the last day of the trip came and I had no choice. I had to tell her, okay, Maya, you can do this. Mama, there's something I need to tell you. She looks at me and she says, "What is it, Maya?" I... You can do this. Just breathe. I haven't had my periods for the last 6 months. That's what I said. The speech I had just went out the window. And then she looks at me and she says, "Well, that means you're pregnant. Right? Okay then, let's get a pregnancy test just to make sure." So we checked out of the hotel, and on the way to the airport, we bought the pregnancy test, and I peed on this stick at the airport, and the test came out positive. So I gave her the test. So she looked at me straight in the eye and said, "Maya, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. I'm proud that you didn't get an abortion. You're going to be a mother. And I'm going to be a grandmother at the age of 37. 37 years old. How amazing is that? How wonderful is that?" Now, telling my mother was one thing, and then telling my father was quite a different experience. Again, I couldn't find the courage to walk up to my father and tell him that I was pregnant. So my mother stepped in and she took the responsibility of telling him. I remember that day so vividly. I was standing by the hallway and I was listening to this conversation that my parents were having in the living room. His mother walks up to my father and she says, "Maya's pregnant." And before he could say anything, she said, "But imagine how brave she must have been. Imagine how terrified she is. She had sex one time. One time." And you know what? I think we should support her. Let's support her. She's all alone in this. And this doesn't have to be the end of her story. As her family, I feel that we should support her. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, everybody in the family knows my secret is out. Everything's good. I'm getting ready to have this baby. And my brother is absolutely excited because he's going to be an uncle. I'm going to be an uncle. So then he goes to school and he shares this great news. He's going to be an uncle. But the thing is, his friends had older siblings. And these older siblings happened to be in my class. So at the time, my brother didn't really understand that people may not be as understanding, as supportive, or as accommodating as my family was. And I remember just being absolutely petrified. I was upset. And he's like, "What did I do wrong?" I mean, everybody in the family is good with this, right? But he didn't know any better because all he knew was my family. And I remember that was the first time that I ever felt shame. So, in preparing for this talk, I was reading a few of my journals. I've been journaling since the age of 13. Would you guys like to meet the 15-year-old Maya? All right, so these are a few of my journals. I wrote this on Tuesday, 17th January 2006, and it reads, "I knew that sooner or later that everyone would have to know, but honestly, I didn't think that it would be this soon. I thought I would have some time till I was ready for people to know. What I don't want is for people to feel sorry for me or bad for me or just feel pity. I really wanted to continue with school, but honestly, I don't think I can. I just feel like everyone is looking down on me and I hate this feeling. I'm just not that strong person that I want to be and I want to give up. I feel so small right now. I feel alone. I feel like I can't run to anybody but myself. The only one that I can truly trust is myself. Anyway, I've decided that I'm not going back to school. I'm not emotionally ready to deal with people's critics and questions. So I came up with this grand master plan. I devised this plan, and my plan was that I would give birth, drop out of school, and then a year later, I would join a brand new school where no one knew me and start a whole brand new life. And I thought that I would be saving my family from the shame and ridicule. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. So I went up to my mother and I said, I'm dropping out of school. I gave her my plan. And then she looked at me straight in the eye. She said, okay, great. That's a good plan, but nope, that's not happening. You're going back to school. And when you go to school, and when people ask you if you're pregnant, you're going to say, yes. So what? So what? So what? So the next day, I didn't go to school, and that was the one time my mother allowed me to skip school. And then the following day, she took me to school. We had this meeting at the principal's office, and it was agreed that I would continue going to school up until I gave birth, so that I'd be able to sit for my IGCSE examinations as planned with the rest of my classmates. And to my surprise, everyone was supportive. The school was supportive, my teachers were supportive, the kids were kind to me, were compassionate, they were nice to me. In fact, everyone joked about how they wanted to be the godmother or godfather of my baby. They even threw me a baby shower. And then, when I gave birth, the whole school came to visit my son and I. Fun fact, the doctor that delivered me and my little brother delivered my son as well. So, weeks after I gave birth, I sat for my first IGCSE paper in French, and I did quite well. Better than most people, better than what I expected as well. I remember that I failed with an F in geography for my mocks examination, and for my final, I got an A. And that is the first time that I realized how resilient the human spirit is. And I realized I'm pretty smart. I can be if I want. Looking back, I didn't realize how lucky I was. Because to me, it was normal. It was normal to have a family, a community, a school that was fully supportive, that was rooting for my success, and that was positive about my situation. I thought that it was normal. It's not. It's not normal. Every year, over 370,000 young girls aged between 10 and 19 get pregnant. And out of these young girls, 13,000 drop out of school due to teenage pregnancies. I wonder how many of those young girls had a supportive family, a supportive school, a supportive community. That could have been me, easily. See, I believe that if these young girls get the opportunity, they can grow to be successful young women. They can grow to be change makers. They can thrive despite their circumstance. They can grow up to be like me, or maybe even better than me. I'm not saying that being a teenage mom was the easiest thing. No, I had my struggles. Lots of them. I remember a couple of weeks before I gave birth, I decided that I would tell this man, let's call him X, that I was pregnant with his child. His reaction? I wrote about it. Of course I did. So it reads, he didn't even care. He was like, are you sure? You didn't have sex with anyone else? He called me a whore. He asked for a DNA test. Why can't he grow up and be mature enough to accept responsibility? I knew it would turn out like this. I don't even know why I told him in the first place. You know what? I don't need him. My baby doesn't need him. We will survive. And I remember that night I just couldn't fall asleep because it dawned upon me that I'm in this parenting thing alone at 16. So then I went back on this writing rampage and I wrote this. I'm so sorry. This is bothering me too much. Don't you think that it's unfair that guys, when they get a chick pregnant, they have the automatic choice to leave and to not care? It just bothers me that X isn't willing to take responsibility. It's just so unfair and there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, X has broken my self-esteem. Maybe it's all in the moment and I feel this way because it just happened. It's so funny how one person can affect your confidence. I did one mistake and I'm paying for it now. How come he doesn't have to pay for it? I'm taking responsibility for what I did, and my kid is going to pay for my mistake too. He's going to grow up not knowing who his father is. That isn't right. He deserves to have a father to love him and be there for him. And that was the start of a very long journey for me. The start of a journey to rebuilding my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my self-worth, and self-love. It was a long journey to learning how to trust men, how to relate with men, especially after I was hurt, abandoned by the first man that I had my first sexual encounter with. So I spent many years in these toxic relationships and cycles because I had so much guilt living inside of me that I couldn't seem to give my son the one thing that I thought he needed, a father. So because his biological father decided that he didn't want to be in his son's life, I said that I'm going to find him a father. I'll find him someone to father him, and I'll find him through the men that I dated. And I remember one particular guy that I dated, and I remember feeling like I was living these two different lives, these two separate worlds. On one end, I'm a girlfriend, and on the other end, I'm a mother. And no matter how hard I tried, these two worlds would never cross paths. It bothered me so much, and triggers for me were especially the PTA meetings, the school sports days, family vacations, because it was a constant reminder of the absence of my child's father. So then I talked to my mom about it, and I remember that she taught me one thing, that my son lacked nothing. He lacked nothing. He was a happy child. He still is a happy child. He grew up in a home full of love. He grew up with a loving family. Myself, my brother, my mom, and my dad. And so I realized that this one thing that I thought he needed, our father, he didn't really need it as much as I thought he did. And that realization completely changed my perspective. It changed my perspective in terms of how I dated, because then I could enjoy dating without having to put the pressure of finding a man to father my child. That's when I truly began enjoying motherhood, enjoying being a single mother, and even enjoy dating. I also struggled with a lot of feelings of failure. I remember feeling so frustrated because I wanted to feel financially independent. I wanted to be able to provide a stable life for my son. But here I am, at the age of 21, earning peanuts with the expenses of a 35-year-old. And I remember thinking, I just want to be able to provide for my son. How will I do it? So I felt like the process was too long and too painful to get financially free and financially independent, and spoke to my mom about it. And she said, well, that's what family is for. We're there to support each other. We're there to be there in times of need and in times of help. Your life isn't going to stay like this forever, you know. Your life will change. It's not going to stay this way forever. So she encouraged me to continue pursuing my dreams. And she reminded me every single day that I could be, do, and have whatever I wanted. I also spent many awkward years parenting while being parented. Mothering while being mothered. Trying to figure out who I am as a person and also trying to figure out who I am as a mother. And I spent many lonely years because when walking into a PTA meeting, here I am, the youngest parent. And then in my early college years and my early 20s, surrounded by my friends and peers, I was often the only parent. So I felt like I really couldn't relate to anyone, or I didn't have anyone to share my experiences with. But then looking back now, I think it was all worth it, because being a mother is the one thing that I am most proud about. My son has taught me so much about being courageous. He's taught me so much about being resilient, about unconditional love as well. And he's 13 now, only 2 years away from being 15, the age at which I got pregnant. And I often think to myself, if my son walked up to me today and told me that he got another girl pregnant, how would I have reacted? Would I be angry? Would I be disappointed? Would I have shown him some compassion, some kindness, support, understanding? Would I have been half the mother that my mother was to me? If I'm honest with you, I'm not really sure. I've learned so much about motherhood. Some from my mother and some from being a mother myself. But the best lesson that I've learned is that motherhood is beautiful, no matter what age. And the irony, I owe it all to my mother.